Thank you all for joining us tonight and for taking the time out to learn about the Western Monarch Conservation with Monarch Milkweed Project and Solano Resource Conservation District. And huge thanks for your donations. This always helps to expand our educational offerings. So my name's Nicole Newell, and I'll be moderating tonight's class. I'm one of the program managers for Sustainable Solano. So we're located in Solano County, which is part of the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And our mission is to nurture initiatives for the good of the whole. So you can learn more about our programs by checking out our website and through our email newsletter. So the basic agenda for tonight, we'll learn about the Monarch Milkweed Project that's local here in Benicia. And then Sarah McKibbin from Solano Resource Conservation District will be giving a presentation on Western Monarch Conservation. So hold on to your questions, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A. And I'm going to pass it now to Ann Whittemore from the Monarch Milkweed Project. She's going to tell us more about the organization and the awesome projects that they're working on. So thank you for being here, Ann, and the floor is yours.
And thank you, Nicole and Allison from Sustainable Solano for hosting us tonight and for all the ongoing support that you are giving our group as we grow. And thanks to all the participants for joining us. I see some familiar faces out there. Some of our wonderful group members and volunteers are here. So nice to see you all. And some people that I don't know. So thank you all for being here tonight. We're really happy to have an opportunity to chat with you and provide some more information about our group and then about monarchs in general. Again, my name is Ann Whittemore. Monarch Milkweed Project started as a group on Nextdoor when my co-founder, Annina Puccio, put a post about saving the monarchs and the pollinators. And I was very inspired. I was like, we should start a group on Nextdoor. And so here we are. And we've had lots of support from the community. Everybody loves the monarch. We have 233 members in our group. And most of those are from Benicia and others just from the Solano County area and beyond. There seems to be a lot of awareness amongst our members about the declining population of the monarch, a lot of concern about that. And but we're very encouraged by the articles we're seeing and the indications we're getting that populations are up in the overwintering areas. And we like to think that it's people like us, our group, Sustainable Solano, the people that participate in a call like this that have had that positive impact amongst many other big efforts going on. But we're very encouraged by that. And we know that it's maybe just a start. It may be a comeback, but if it is, it's going to require ongoing work to sustain. And so that's part of what we're here for. Our work at Monarch Milkweed Project is around three main areas. That's plant, participate, and promote. And plant, of course, is about planting milkweed and pollinators. You probably already know that milkweed is the only plant that monarch butterflies can lay their eggs on and the only plant that the caterpillars can eat. So without milkweed, the monarch butterfly can't survive. Plant participate, by that we mean advocating for the well-being of the monarch, spread the word about planting milkweed and pollinators, discourage harmful pesticides and herbicides, and join us on Nextdoor. If you're not already part of the group, just look us up, Monarch Milkweed Project, and join the group. If you aren't in the local area, you might have to request to join, and we're happy to have you from whatever geographical area you are in. And we also have a website, monarchmilkweedproject.org, and that'll be updated in the near future. It's a little out of date, so patience with that, please. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thirdly, by promote, we mean educate. So that's learn all we can, teach others about the issues and solutions for the monarch, and share the knowledge, which is what we're here for tonight. And I'm sure we'll learn a lot from Sarah this evening. I want to share our deep thanks to Sarah for presenting tonight, her time and expertise at a very busy time in her life. We're very grateful, Sarah, for that. Thank you. Before she gets started, my partner, Annina Puccio, is going to share some information about upcoming events that we're working on over the next few months. So Annina, you can unmute. And again, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. And here's Annina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Annina Puccio. And for those that are in our group, you see that I post a lot on Nextdoor, and I encourage you to go out on Nextdoor regularly and see what opportunities we have to volunteer and to participate in ways in the group. The first thing I want to mention is that we just had a plant sale of pollinating and milkweed plants, thanks to Sarah McKibbin and the Solano County Resource District. And we were able to distribute all kinds of plants to help you get your garden started. And hopefully we're going to have another plant sale after the Solano County Resource Conservation District's plant sale on the 26th. And Sarah will tell you more about that. I want to let you know, though, as part of our planting initiative, we have set up relationships with 5 or 6 different nurseries in the area to get milkweed at a discount price. And what we are encouraging you to do is to let us know if you need milkweed throughout the season, and we will get milkweed to you at a discount price for a donation to our group. And we rely on donations for our overhead supplies, but we mostly rely on donations so we can buy more plants and do things to promote the monarch, the Western monarch, and to save the Western monarch. So we appreciate your donation. So again, stay tuned to Nextdoor. We also have a t-shirt sale that is going on right now. I have ordered extra t-shirts, so if you'd still like to get a t-shirt with our logo on it, you can. And we will be selling t-shirts throughout the season. And then this weekend, we have a Seeds into Envelopes volunteer event that is full. We have plenty of volunteers, but after this weekend, we are going to have available for a donation, for a $5 donation, a packet of seeds of either showy or narrow leaf milkweed, which are native to the area. And if you could hold up the package maybe so people could see it. And we are going to be providing that so that you can grow your own milkweed. I wanted to say, if you need any information you need to contact us, you can also send an email to jxaudi@yahoo.com if you need to order something or need milkweed or a t-shirt. And don't worry about remembering that. It's also up on the Nextdoor site. So we want to thank you for being involved. I'm going to give this back to Nicole. Thank you very much. And let's save those monarchs this year.
Thank you, Annina and Anne. It's so great to have it. And everybody here. It's so wonderful people showing up for the beautiful monarchs. So Sarah McKibbin is going to be given the presentation tonight. So she is a restoration project manager for the Solano Resource Conservation District. And she'll be discussing the Western monarch conservation efforts and what we can do to help support those beautiful butterflies. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight to educate us on monarchs, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm glad to have the opportunity to share what I've learned and am still learning about monarchs and monarch conservation and what we can do. And it's a constantly evolving process for finding out what we can do. So, whoops, I started on the wrong slide. Share. All right. Are we seeing the entry slide? Perfect. So we are Solano Resource Conservation District. We are a special district in Solano County, much like a fire district or a school district. And we are funded by a portion of property taxes within our district. But that is only a small fraction of our funding. The majority of our funding, I think it's like 90 to 95% of what we do, is funded by grants that we apply for and receive. And so we were lucky enough to get a grant from the Wildlife Conservation Board a couple years ago to overhaul our storage yard that has about a half an acre of monarch habitat and pollinator habitat that we'll be having workshops at again someday, hopefully, but also to provide a lot of outreach opportunities for the public. So I put together this presentation about a year ago, and it's fairly general. Some of you guys might already know some of the basics of this, but I just like to start with a general monarch life cycle. As Anne and Annina had mentioned earlier, milkweed is crucial to the monarch life cycle. Pretty much every life stage of the monarch depends upon milkweed. So the eggs in the far left picture are laid on the plant. And when the caterpillars hatch, that is their only food source, is milkweed plants. After they form a chrysalis, I guess for the most part, they can actually put their chrysalis on anything. So I guess that's the only life cycle, portion of the life cycle that's not dependent on milkweed. But and even as a butterfly, they do use the nectar of the milkweed flowers. Milkweed flowers are phenomenal nectar sources for butterflies and all kinds of pollinators. So this life cycle repeats actually about 4 to 5 times a year. And that last stage, the last butterfly of the year will actually migrate to the west coast of California for their overwintering site. So there's 2 populations in North America of monarch butterflies. There's the western population and then the eastern population. It's divided by the Rocky Mountain Range. So our western population, like as I mentioned, overwinters along the California coast, and then in the spring and summer spends most of its time breeding and foraging on nectar plants. And then the eastern population spends most of its time in the Midwest and migrates to Mexico, where they overwinter in the OML fir forest trees. So in general, what monarchs need, as I mentioned, breeding and migratory habitat, and the 2 main components for that is native milkweed and flowering nectar plants. So milkweed is a great source of nectar, but it's better to have a wide diversity of flowering plants so that they're available throughout the year as opposed to just a month or 2 out of the year. And then their overwintering habitat on the West Coast is usually pine trees and eucalyptus trees along the coast, pretty much from Santa Rosa down south to San Diego, and I believe a little bit in northern Mexico or northern Baja. But they're usually within a mile or 2 of the coast. And even though they don't really use milkweed too much in the winter, they still need flowering nectar plants to sustain their energy reserves so that they can start the migration back out in the spring. So it's actually believed that milkweed planted in the winter, or actively growing milkweed under their overwintering groves, can actually be disruptive. So it's generally advised to either cut it down or avoid planting directly around overwintering sites. So the monarch population, as you all know, has crashed significantly. In the 1980s, it was estimated to be 4.5 million monarchs. And while this year it's rebounded a bit from last year, the population is still declined by 95% at least. This is the most recent monarch counts. So this is put on by the Xerces Society. This past Thanksgiving count was the 25th year of data that they've collected. And so these are basically all community members, scientists that have gone out and helped collect or helped count butterflies in overwintering groves in a period of time around Thanksgiving. And then they've actually recently started doing it again around New Year's. But the Thanksgiving count is the main data source that they have. But the blue line just shows that they have generally counted more and more sites and monitored more and more sites, but we've still seen significant declines. The past few years, last year was the most depressing at less than 2,000 butterflies, though it has rebounded to nearly 250,000 just this past winter. So it's promising, but I feel like we still have a long way to go, which is why you guys are so important to help. Different reasons why they are declining. It's not a one size fits all or single issue at play. Probably the biggest one is just loss of breeding habitat. So as I mentioned earlier, there's 4 generations of butterflies each year. And so if one of those generations is lost because there's not enough milkweed or there's not enough nectar to sustain them, you basically lose every subsequent generation as well. So it's really important that they have milkweed and nectar sources throughout their breeding habitat, which is most of California. So habitat loss due to urban sprawl and development, and actually agriculture with extensive tilling. And pesticide use overall is detrimental, whether it be an insecticide, but even wide-scale use of herbicides such as Roundup, it doesn't directly affect the monarch, but when you have the majority of your crops, like in the Midwest, are Roundup ready corn, soy, cotton, that allows farmers to spray Roundup or glyphosate blindly, you're basically wiping out any possible milkweed plants that would naturally grow along roadsides or ditches or amongst the corn rows. Yeah, so the Roundup ready crops, basically the only thing that can survive is that specific crop. So pesticides are also used for vector control and around homeowners' yards. And they've also found studies where insecticides, like especially the systemic ones, like neonicotinoids, can reside for many, many years, sometimes in some cases, and will contaminate plants for months after the pesticide was actually applied. Loss of overwintering habitat is a big one due to development, but also just even the overwintering groves that are not being cut down or developed are just declining with age, and they're not being, there's no regeneration. So climate change overall, it's a little bit harder to pin down, but overall the rainfall patterns we've seen are just much more, much more unpredictable. And we've, this is probably our 3rd or 4th straight year of a midwinter drought. I think in the area that I'm in, it's been since December 30th that we've actually had significant rainfall. So we're going on 8-9 months or weeks with no rain. And that makes it hard for nectar plants and milkweed alike to make it through the winter. And then also just even warmer winters is keeping milkweed viable throughout the winter. It doesn't go dormant when it normally would, which allows parasites to proliferate. So one of the main ones is, I'm not going to try to pronounce it right now. I had it down earlier, but I'm not going to do it now live. But OE is one of the largest ones. I believe it's a protozoa, but in any case, with milkweeds that don't go dormant in the winter, particularly tropical milkweed, which is the picture off to the right, the parasite is able to accumulate in the plant. And That becomes problematic when you have the following year with the caterpillars eating the leaves. It allows the parasite to accumulate in the caterpillar's body, and you end up with either deformed butterflies, such as the picture on the top right, or they either can't fly or they just can't survive in general. So it's really important that the milkweed either goes dormant naturally in each winter, or it's cut back to the ground throughout the winter so that it interrupts the accumulation of that parasite. So tropical milkweed is the main, I guess, culprit right now that people are finding, but it also, as I mentioned earlier, because when it's getting planted too close to overwintering groves, if it's still actively growing in the winter time when monarchs are supposed to be relaxing and not breeding, they exit diapause when they're supposed to be resting and join, go back into their breeding cycle. So I'm not really sure how much of a problem that is yet, but it's kind of one of those things that we just don't want to mess with nature any more than we already have. So if you do have tropical milkweed, or even just native milkweed that doesn't seem to be going dormant, just due to the weather, the easy way to remedy that is just to cut it back October, November, and just keep it down throughout the winter so that they're not using it for breeding. Some of our native milkweed species that are most commonly found and are most commonly encouraged to plant are the narrowleaf milkweed and the showy milkweed. They're both really resilient to our climate, even with the dry winter spells we've been getting. So these are the most common ones that you'll find and the easiest one to get at nurseries. But there's other native species that are also appropriate and actually believed to be helpful closer to the coast is the heartleaf milkweed and the woolly pod milkweed, these top two down here. Those exit their dormancy earlier, so they resprout from the ground sooner. So those monarch butterflies that are just leaving their overwintering groves in, February-ish, January, February, are looking for milkweed. And with the narrowleaf and the showy, they might not be able to find it right as quickly because it usually doesn't start sprouting up till like March, April, depending on the weather. So the heartleaf and the woolly pod milkweed will grow sooner and provide milkweed habitat for monarchs. So they're a little bit harder to find. I know there's programs that are trying to source the seeds and propagate them, but I think that's a work in progress for sure. So also as important as milkweed is planting nectar sources, and having a diversity of species is important so that you have a year-round bloom. Most plants only bloom for like a month or two throughout the year. So if you have a good diversity, you can have nearly year-round blooming, definitely January, February through December. January is pretty tough. I think there's only one or two plants that will actually bloom in January, but and then also a diversity just for nutrition, just having a diverse diet. I mean, it's just the same as us. We wouldn't want to eat the same thing every day and still be healthy. So protecting those plants from pesticides, especially insecticides, the systemic ones such as neonicotinoids that can reside in the soil and in the plant for months after its application. And then just in my reading over the years, there's kind of this, not a rule necessarily, but if you're planting like a little monarch garden or a way station, one kind of general rule of thumb, I guess, is to kind of go by this 110-1 rule that I've heard or made up. So ideally, your minimum garden area is 100 square feet, which would include at least 10 milkweed plants, and ideally 2 species at least, if not more. And then each of the nectar plants would cover about 1 meter squared, which is about a 3 by 3. And that's just a kind of a good starting point for Monarch waystation, and just a general, small little garden. This is a plant list, a nectar plant list provided by the Xerces Society. There's several different plant lists that I could send you guys links to. This is a pretty basic one, but I like how this one's arranged because it does organize them so that you've got the plants that start blooming earlier in the year and then all the way through to the end of winter and summer. And you can look at the forbs, which are basically just herbaceous plants. And then also shrubs and trees are, including those in your planting can give you even more diversity and year-round bloom. So this, the coyote bush, all of these right here, the coyote bush, mule's fat, and desert broom, those are all in the Baccharis family. Those are not pretty, but they bloom almost year round. So they're a really good basic plant to have in your garden. This is a lot of words, so we can send out the presentation afterwards if you're interested in it, but this was just some garden design, layout design things that I'd come across. The general rule of thumb is to plant milkweed around the outside of your garden and preferably have it mulched heavily around the milkweed plants so that they stand out. And it also keeps the weed competition down. And then in the center, you could have a mix of your nectar plants. Ideally, they're not planted near fences or buildings, so it's kind of out in the open in a sunny spot. And then you could also include a butterfly puddler, which I haven't built one yet, but I'm hoping to in the next couple weeks. But you can YouTube video, it's pretty straightforward. I've seen it as basic as just a ceramic basin filled with sand. I've read to put some fruit in there that as it rots, it actually attracts different species of butterflies. And if you just put it under a dripping faucet, or if you had a little needle valve or something like that, it would just keep it moist. So I haven't tried it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And then just other general ways you can help. So avoiding pesticide use again, exercise your purchasing power. That's the easiest thing you could do without really doing a whole lot. Opting for organic produce as much as you can. That way you are definitely avoiding GMOs and pesticide use, but even just non-GMOs at the very least goes a long way, because if it's non-GMO, you're avoiding any of those Roundup Ready crops. So particularly corn, soy, and cotton. I believe they're trying to figure out how to make Roundup Ready wheat, but I don't think they've gotten there yet. And then protecting the overwintering sites. This one's a little bit more vague, a little bit tougher. That's why Annina is so fantastic to work with, because she's really good at advocating to our senators and our local politicians. You can find those overwintering sites in your area on westernmonarchcount.org. I can also send out a link to that. But it's a really interesting interactive map that you can use to find the overwintering sites near you, and actually it links all of the most recent Thanksgiving counts as well. And then you can volunteer for community science projects, such as getting involved in those Thanksgivings and New Year's counts. And then currently, we actually just reported one today. My coworker found or saw 2 monarchs at one of my habitat restoration sites in Vallejo, and was able to snap a really blurry picture, but you can still submit it to the Western Monarch Mystery Challenge. And I think you can either submit it through iNaturalist or you can email it. But between February 14th and April 22nd, it's the Washington State University is trying to collect data on what monarchs are doing and where they're hanging out during the breeding and migratory season. Like, we know where they are during the overwintering time of year, but nobody really knows as much about them, any other time. So it's pretty easy to do, and you get entered to win, I think, a $50 gift card every week. for reporting and observation. And then, of course, donating and supporting your local nonprofits. You guys are doing that today. So yeah, just working with people like Anne and Annina is a great way to go, and keeping it local. This slide I debated to even include. Unfortunately, most of the programs that are available for assistance are targeted towards, you know, either public lands or large landholders or like farmers and ranchers. But, you know, if you had property, or if you had a coalition of, you know, a nonprofit of group of people on Nextdoor that wanted to get together a project at like a local open space or right of way or trail, I think some of these could be used. So the Xerces Society, they have Monarch and pollinator kits that you can apply for, and they're free if you get your, you know, it's like a small grant essentially. MonarchWatch.org has a couple different milkweed programs and restoration project programs where they provide materials and supplies. Monarch Joint Venture has lots of different programs. The most recent and applicable, I think, to most people with, if you've got large tracts of land or farming of any kind, would be their free seed program. And then one thing that we've been doing, it's very rudimentary, but we've started putting together waystation kits that are small enough that you could put in your garden, but big enough to count as a waystation that you could have registered on monarchwatch.org. But this year we have a spring plant sale coming up on March 26th. That's a Saturday. It's at Berryessa Brewing in Winters, which is far for a lot of you guys, but it's from 12 to 5. It's a brewery. It's a pretty cool place to hang out and bring the family, and it's very family friendly. So we're going to be having a plant sale, and we're hoping to put together a good amount of Monarch kits to sell. We haven't figured out how much they're going to cost yet, but we're just trying to cover the cost of the plants and the trays that we're putting them in. But since we've partnered with other local nonprofits to grow a lot of the plants, it's going to be much lower cost than you would find to buy all the plants individually. But they'll probably include about 36 small little transplants of milkweed and nectar plants. Just a list of resources. These are the most common groups or nonprofit organizations that have all kinds of awesome handouts and plant lists and other resources on how you can help. And that was it.
Thank you. That was awesome, Sarah. That's really incredible. And Allison did put the link for the plant sale into the chat, so definitely check that out. That's
thanks.
Yeah, so so now it's time for questions. Do we have any questions? If you have any questions, just enter them into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them. I had a question, like, what's your all-time favorite? I mean, other than milkweed, is there like, do you have a favorite like pollinator plant to put out for the monarchs to plant, Sarah?
It's one of those Baccharis plants. It's mule fat is an easy way to go because it's, let me see if I can pull it up and share it, but actually going to Calscape, if you're looking for plants, calscape.org, I believe, is an awesome resource. But mule fat is easy because you can literally, if you find one, you can grow it from a cutting. So you just cut a section of the stem and stick it in the ground and water it, and it grows a whole new plant. But it gets to be about maybe 10 feet tall and 3 to 6 feet wide. Again, it's not a very pretty plant, but it's kind of innocuous if you put it in the background, but it can bloom pretty much year round. So there's a couple other species that are in that same group that are also really good, but this one's just super easy to find and grow, and it's just, yeah, low-hanging fruit.
Yay, good. Yeah, it's a big one though.
Yeah,
Like,
okay,
it's
so
bigger
the smaller ones,
smaller one, yeah.
yeah, smaller ones, Ridgeron, or Seaside Daisy, that's,
Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah, I'll see if I can find a picture of it. Yeah, anyway, I can't talk and like do things at the same time.
No, don't worry, Seaside
Yeah.
Daisy. That's
Seaside
right.
Daisy's a good one, goldenrod, California aster. I mean, honestly, that all of those species are on that list, that nectar plant list from Xerces Society. So I don't think there's anything fancy that I know of that isn't on that list.
So we have a question for Anne. Lots of gratitude for the presentation, and then question from Anne. Do we need to submit photos to the Western Monarch Mystery Project or just report what we saw?
It is, you are supposed to attach a picture, and it says it's okay if it's blurry. So I think if, and smartphones at this point are so, like the cameras are so fancy that zoomed out, you don't see anything, but you can zoom in well enough for the most part that they can identify monarchs. So I think you just need to have a picture of some sort and the location, and that's all they're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. I don't see any other questions, but I have another question. So I have the family jewel milkweed, and I don't think you had that on the list. Is that a native one or a non-native one? And are you not recommending growing that one?
I've heard of jewel milkweed. It's like a really, yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know. I mean, I'm always gonna push people towards native milkweed just because we know it grows here and that's what our monarchs are adapted to. I've also heard concern of some species of milkweed don't have as much of the toxin that protects the monarch caterpillars. So milkweed is toxic to, you know, grazing animals, and the caterpillars can accumulate those toxins, and it protects them from birds and other predators. And if they're not getting as many of those toxins, they're not becoming as poisonous, and wildlife is not learning that they are unsafe to eat. I don't know that that's actually been proven, but I generally just try to stick with what what's worked for nature all this time. I try to just stick with that as much as possible.
That one just has grown really well in my yard. So that was like, oh, it's done so well, but then, it does want, you have to cut it back. You definitely
and that's why I would never tell people like, no, you can't plant that because it's, detrimental. That's what I've heard so far. So, but if you can't get anything else to grow, then it's better than nothing as far as I'm concerned.
And then that's the hard part too, is that like in November, there were still caterpillars on it. And it was like, it's hard to cut it back when you see caterpillars on it.
Right. Yeah. I haven't had to cross that bridge myself. But that's the recommendation that I've been reading. So, I see a very interesting way to ask a question on the. Hi, Larry. The aphids are supposedly co-evolved with the milkweed, and like the milkweed is just fine with it. It doesn't look so great towards the end of the summer, but if you really want to get the aphids gone in a natural way, just spraying them off with water, or even soapy water, like dish soap, can work really well to get rid of aphids in general. But from everything I've heard is that aphids actually aren't that much of a problem, and they're going to cover milkweed no matter what, the bright orange ones, if that's what you're talking about. It's just they've like co-evolved, and it's just sort of like a package deal. But soapy water or spraying them off with water is one way that you can get rid of it naturally.
Sarah, I have a question. Some people in our group have been taking butterflies indoors, or I should say caterpillars indoors. And we read, reports that is not good. And we can understand the reasons for that, but some of us sometimes think, anything to save any of them from predators is better than doing nothing. And I wondered your thoughts on that.
I have not made I don't know. I mean, I see both sides of the coin. That's a tough one, because who's to say that we aren't seeing this huge rebound in monarchs because people haven't been, because people have been planting non-native milkweed that doesn't go dormant in the winter and been bringing them inside and protect. I mean, that's a tough one. I don't really.
I agree. Everything that I read, kind of, I can see both sides of it too. So I'm glad to hear that we're not the only ones that are not really black and white on that opinion.
Yeah, I had a lady call me today that found a monarch on the ground that appeared to be injured or wasn't flying, and she's like, what do I do? I don't want it to just die. And I was like, well, I would try to save it. I mean, it might just be at the end of its life cycle anyway, and it might die no matter what, but I don't know, give it a shot, bring it inside and try to feed it. But yeah, this is probably not the most approved advice to be giving, but you're also talking to somebody that used to save birds and raccoons and all kinds of animals. So yeah, that's a tough one for me.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Anna and Annina, do you have anything else to add? I think Annina said something in the chat. Did you?
Yeah, I'm having butterfingers here today. I tried to put in the chat that the best way, go out on Nextdoor. If you have any questions or comments, we can answer them, or send me an email at jxaudi@yahoo.com. You can get plants through us. We will have way stations for you. You can get t-shirts, everything. You can volunteer. Let us know if you want to volunteer to help some of our projects. It's very important. You can help volunteer with our legislative advocacy. Anything that you can do to help us save the Western monarch, we are very appreciative. So thank you.
Including, Annina, can they make a donation by contacting there?
Yes, they can make a donation, Anne.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.